start button. Okay, so first, can you tell me a bit more about the context to which you apply mobbing? What's the project? What's the organization? How complex it is, and so on.
Sure. So it varies. It could be small, even training sessions, or it could be like a big project. It's equally applicable to many different contexts. It's not just like well suited for one type of activity. So, you know, the idea is to increase the quality of delivery. And so I feel that mob programming is probably the biggest breakthrough we've seen in our profession in the past, let's say, 20 years. And so it's a significant thing. But I don't know what you would you like me to talk about? There's many things to talk about, but overall, we are seeing positive results from this way of working. And, you know, it's also a challenge because it indeed challenges some fundamental assumptions as well as ingrained habits and conditioning. To all of us, pretty much, it feels like something that is counterintuitive and it cannot possibly work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's this hump, there's this kind of a hurdle or a roadblock that it's a challenge to overcome. And now, you know, depending on the scenario, different people may abandon or manage to go over that hump and then give it a go. It's like anything else. You know, any other practice, there's always proponents and opponents.
Yes, yes.
And then, you know, some people just kind of don't want to go there, just categorically refuse. No, I'm never going to try. And some people are curious and they try. And, you know, it's like anything else, right? You know that.
Yeah. And actually, how did you introduce it to the organization you're in, or you just came there and it was already introduced?
Well, I introduced it basically in few ways. One is, you know, if I'm responsible for transforming the organization, transforming the team, then I'm given a little bit of free hand to introduce new practices. And then, you know, by that arrangement, the team is obliged to follow. So that's nice. Like with saying, look, here we are changing the pace and making some changes, and here is the new program. And then, okay, let's give it a try. So it's kind of mandated.
Okay.
Or it could be in some organizations, I would move in, and then I don't have that much of a free hands, but I'm given some allowances to, for example, organize dojos. So I like running dojos. And for example, you know, we can have a TDD dojo where people participate once a week or something like that. And then part of that dojo, I introduce mob programming. And like we'll be learning this technique by doing mob programming. So that gives people a chance to try it, see how it works, right? So, you know, depends on the situation. I don't think there's a formula to say, okay, this is how you do it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm looking more for like specific situations where you, for example, were opposed, and how did you convince the team or the people that it works, or whether you've decided that it's not worth the effort to introduce it into that team. So
it helps if people have already, been involved in pair programming, because that's kind of the next step. And it makes more sense. Now, a lot of situations we meet people where they never even tried pair programming, or if they tried, it didn't really work out for whatever reason, right? And then they are not really interested.
Mhm.
And yes, there are situations where it's pretty much impossible to introduce,
Okay.
and people will oppose categorically.
Uh-huh.
I had a situation where people come to me and say, look, the reason I chose this profession, software development, is
Mhm.
specifically because I don't want to work with others. I want to be in a situation, I want to give myself such circumstances where I can work on my own.
Mhm.
Basically, I'm I'm sitting in my room over here,
Yeah.
and I don't want to work with anyone. I don't want to attend any meetings. I don't want to be involved in any Slack channels.
Mhm.
I don't want any emails. All I'm asking you to do is give me a Jira ticket, and I will work on it, and then I will send
Yeah.
you the when I'm done. So that type of a excuse me mentality or approach definitely they're not going to be interested in trying our program
Mhm.
right
Yeah.
off the bat. Okay, count me out. And then either they go away and continue doing what they're doing, or they look for another project or something. So these people, I find, are, you know, it's not, you cannot coerce them and you cannot convince them, and you respect that, and you're like, okay, that's how you like doing things, and that's fine, no problem.
Mhm.
We'll continue this way, and you continue your way. But
Yeah.
for people who are more open to collaboration, then why not? You know, give it a try. Uh, I
Okay.
find
Yeah.
the way to convince people is the easiest way is if we are doing TDD.
Mhm.
If we're not doing TDD, then it's kind of maybe less convincing. But with TDD, and also very helpful to me, is combining TDD with mutation testing.
Okay.
And what that does, that really helps. For example, you know, we have a session and we are basically swarming on, there's a problem, that's
Mhm.
something we want to solve, right? And then we are swarming, and okay, we are writing tests, and you know, we see tests fail with all this usual thing, right?
Yeah.
And the team gets more and more engaged. Oh, okay, how do we do this and that? In the end, let's say we iterate and we deliver something that, well, all tests pass, right?
Mhm.
And goes, okay, we're done. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let's now try and run mutation testing on
Mhm.
this. And then when you run mutation testing, more likely than not, there are
Mhm.
going to be some surviving mutants.
Okay.
It's kind of unusual. I mean, sometimes no, you kill all mutants, but most likely they're going to be, uh-oh. So we're like, okay, so we have some surviving mutants here. What does
Mhm.
that mean? Right? And if people, sometimes people don't understand, what do you mean surviving mutants? And we explain, well, you know, you change the logic, but the tests are okay with change logic. Now,
Mhm.
that's a problem. Why would not tests complain? If your business
Yeah.
policy rule is automated and it has certain logic, and now you change that logic and you run tests again, and everybody's okay with that, but that's not good, right? I mean, the tests are not that sensitive to your processing. And in my experience, that creates a really intense focus in the group, because
Mhm.
now the group is all breeds and thinks like one, because they were like, okay, we got to solve this. We can't leave the session with some mutants living and walking around.
Mhm.
And in my experience, usually they will be very, very determined and very focused to
Mhm.
kill all mutants, to eliminate all mutants. And they will not leave the session unless there is a time limit, right? They would really not leave the session until that's sorted out.
Yeah.
And interesting observation is when that's sorted out, that's the moment I think when the team realizes, okay, it's a catharsis. It's like, okay, this way of working really makes sense, because we really are
Mhm.
nailing it as a group of people, not just as somebody's smart in the group and they go in and fix it. It's more like a collective accomplishment.
Yeah.
And yeah,
That probably happens in a dojo at first,
or in real life
uh-huh.
situations where we have, we're working on something, and okay, all tests pass, everything looking good, let's run mutation. Oh, we have some surviving mutants. all right, people are like, no, I'm not going to leave it for tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Because it's, at least a little bit of pride also involved in that, where people are saying, well, you got to fix this, right? Because it feels like a bit of a Swiss cheese situation where it's kind of has a lot of holes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then as a group, right, we are like, okay, well, we can't allow that. Or it's a good motivator, right? And so people like to jump on it, work together, this and that, and mobbing all kinds of ideas and suggestions and rotations. And then in the end, usually they solve it. And then there's a good positive feeling,
Yeah.
a feeling of mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Because you have this objectively measured, impartial indicator that's telling you, yes, you solved it. It's not, it's not somebody's opinion or somebody's kind of arbitration. It's basically the machine is telling you that, yes, you sorted it out, right? And that gives, I think, a good feeling to the mob, right? And then people usually, I think, if it happens, they feel like they want to continue working like that.
Yeah. And it becomes a positive feedback loop. So
yeah, they don't feel like, okay, this was a nice little exercise, but I'm going back to my old ways. It becomes obvious that this is maybe a more solid way of working. And so that gives some impetus to continue. And of course, the more you work that way, the more reinforcement, the more you are kind of conditioning yourself and you want to come back.
Yeah.
The same, but on the other side, if there's failures, then it's a negative reinforcement and people like, I think I'm going to skip the next one. I'm not going to participate. So it's it's a slippery slope. You never know, right?
Yeah.
But I find having these metrics or these objectively, measurable indicators of success much stronger motivator than some boss saying, "Yeah, this is looking good, thank you, blah blah blah." Because it's subjective, right? And so this is why I think mob programming is very well suited for our profession, because sometimes people, I have people who are not doing software development, who are maybe sales or business analysis, whatnot. And sometimes they attend the session or they talk to me and they get excited and like, hey, can we do this also in if it's not software development, can we do mob programming in other areas? And sure, but what's missing if you're not doing software development, you don't have those objective instant feedback, such as all tests pass, zero surviving mutants, and some other linting and static code analysis metrics that will tell you, yeah, your code duplication is very low, your cyclomatic complexity is super low, your class coupling is super low. These things are objectively measurable, so you can you can see at the end of the exercise, almost like a X-ray or lab results.
Yeah,
everything looking good. We have good metrics. We are confident in what we did here, right? So yeah, go ahead.
So you've tried mobbing not only while implementing features, but also in different areas. But
well, in my experience, okay, so maybe I can talk about my past experiences.
Okay.
If that you think it's okay.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah. So I started my career like 32 years ago. And I remember back in 1993, I was hired as a engineering lead to develop. There is a provincial healthcare program, and what was needed is automation in the hospitals. There's something called admission, transfer, and discharge. So admitting patients and transferring them, then discharging them from the hospital. Yeah. And there's a lot of paperwork, and they decided to automate all that and have it as a system that's automated. And then I was in charge of kind of from the engineering side of things. But then we got, there's about 50 odd hospitals in British Columbia. and we got the hospital administrators, the head of the hospitals, all kinds of stakeholders engaged to get together and to discuss the expectations. Okay, what is this system supposed to be doing once it's implemented, right? Yeah. So basically, we would book the entire day in a big boardroom with a catered lunch, and and all these people round table and whiteboard and talking and charting and blah blah, blah, and then keep going. That was basically mob programming.
Yeah.
1993, right? Everything was face to face. People were rotating. People were driving, navigating, discussing. The only difference is it wasn't really real programming, meaning writing code, but it was, shaping up the system and creating some kind of a workflow. At the end of all that, we had a body of expectations, like what is this thing supposed to be doing, right? And then, of course, with that, you go and you do your typical, back then you do your typical waterfall.
Yeah.
Back then we didn't know about extreme programming or agile or anything like that, right? But what I'm saying is, even back then, everybody was doing mob programming except for programmers.
Well,
right.
Okay.
That's how, that's my experience, how the business is. You run the business. You run business by getting people together in a room, and they're talking and they're collaborating and figuring out. And then when they're kind of get to the end, okay, we want that, then give them over to the information, whatever, specialists. And then we implemented writing programs, writing code. And then, because, as you know the story, because it was all taking forever and it was really very low success rate or batting average of these waterfall projects, run over budget, run over time. When they deliver, they're not even close to what the expectations were, and then we in a position where Kent Beck and all these people started mid-90s to slowly formulate extreme programming, and then there was test-driven development, there was Agile Manifesto. Then from that we kind of grew into DevOps.
Yeah.
From that we grew into no estimates and mob programming, which is where we are at this point, right? So to me, it looks like, we are transforming our profession to be more like running a business instead of just going on the side and doing your own, whatever we were doing. And, it's not easy because so many of us have been conditioned by decades of working in isolation and all that. And to us, it's like, wow, this not unfamiliar, sounds stupid, right?
Yeah.
And the rest. So again, if I'm going back to your question, yes, you can do mob programming in any collaboration situation, but what really, to me, means or contributes to the success and to the staying power is if you have a solid feedback.
Okay.
Because, okay, so back then when we were in this boardroom spending months, discussing the system for the hospitals, we did not get any feedback. It was all paper takes anything. You can put anything on paper. It won't complain, right? Yeah. So you can draw any diagrams, you can talk about any concepts and whatnot, and people takes it and it looks like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. But then when you actually start putting it into some real material, then you start getting some feedback or some pushback, right? Or you learn what works, what doesn't work. So mob programming, as we're talking about today, is good because you get pretty much instant feedback.
Yeah. Okay.
As you are making changes to your system, and if you're doing it properly, the extreme programming way and test-driven development and all the other stuff, then the system is going to inform you as you're making a change. Is everything okay? Or by making this change, you broke something, and you need that feedback as soon as possible, right? And that's what you don't get from paperwork. And this is where I think the disconnect becomes when people go away and do the daydreaming session and visionary, and you can say anything, right?
Yeah.
And many of these things make perfect sense, and everybody agrees, like, yeah, this is great. But then in reality, maybe you were completely off base, but you don't know.
Mhm.
And then you're waiting for months to learn that no, this is not going to work for you, right? So what I'm saying is, unless we find a way, similar way in business or in some other areas where we get that immediate feedback,
Mhm.
mob programming will be more effective in the actual software development.
Mhm.
Because we found a way to get quick feedback, to learn from the system if this is going to hold water or not.
Yeah.
As we are making changes. And again, I find that those activities that I was always involved with, business, doing mobbing and doing all these daydreaming sessions and brainstorming, they were all about huge batches, like big batch, right? But as we are learning in our profession, big batches are not conducive to quality work.
Mhm.
And so we now are learning to chop it into smaller and smaller and smaller batches. And the smaller the batches, the quicker the feedback is.
Yeah.
And we can adjust, and we risk less defects or outages or missing the mark or being off, So that's where I see the difference is in business world, we are still stuck in the big batches, and the bigger the better, because now people think, yeah, let's come up with a grandiose plan and how we're going to become the biggest whatever provider for this. This is a huge batch, and now you come and give it to the software development crew, and they're looking at this huge batch. And if it's waterfall, then of course chances of it succeeding are slim, because now you have this big frozen batch where they say, okay, everything frozen, no more changes. And now you're spending months and months and months only to learn that, no, this is not really where we want to be, right? So that's the big progress we made with Kent Beck's extreme programming, and then everything was unfolded from there. And now we are getting, I think, into a even more elevated territory with Woody Zuhl. Actually, I had a conversation with Woody last night about mobbing. So we just talked about it. And also lately, I've been having a lot of discussions with different people about mob programming, right? So it's very interesting. And people are very, very interested in when they hear that, right? And everybody's like, oh, wow. So looks like, it's gaining momentum. But sorry. It's gaining momentum. However, again, it won't. I don't think it will work for teams that are not doing extreme programming.
Okay, so
if you have a team that's, if we have a team here that's used to grabbing a huge batch and then divvying up the workload, like you do this, you do this, you do this, and then they go away and they spend whatever weeks, months, or even a single sprint. I don't think that's good for mob programming. There's going to be some misunderstanding and people will be disappointed, like, nah, it doesn't work. So maybe the prerequisite, I would say, still is you have to be focusing on limiting the work in progress. If you have a lot of things on the go at the same time, a lot of people work on many things at the same time, and they're all like 70% done, right? And then each one is kind of pretty hefty batch. I don't think mobbing is going to help there. It's going to just create confusion, right? So I would advise, if people want to do that, maybe consider first limiting your work in progress, constraining it, and then striving to have a small item in your work in progress buffer. And mob programming is also described as one piece flow. So only one piece is flowing, which is very foreign to many teams. Many teams are used to having many, many pieces flowing at the same time. And that is very detrimental, I think, to successful mob programming. If we have a mob in the session and everybody in that session is worried about something else they're supposed to be doing, they're seeing we are swarming on this one thing,
Mhm.
And meanwhile, people in the mob are thinking, oh my God, but I'm not working on this thing my boss is gonna be asking me about, right? You cannot expect from those people to be fully focused on the mobbing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And right there, your chances of succeeding are very slim. So it is in my opinion, it is a real problem, right?
Mhm.
And that's why we are still seeing bigger traction when we introduce mob programming, if it's an educational session or a dojo, because now we clear the agenda. Okay, the boss says it's okay to spend 5 hours today on this. Don't
Mhm.
worry about your Jira tickets, park them, then they can focus. But if those Jira tickets are alive and weighing on them, right, they cannot really put their heart into chasing after this one issue,
Mhm.
right? Because everything else is like, you're nervous. You're like, oh my God, I'm missing the beat here. My boss is going to get upset, right?
Yeah.
So, and given the fact that still many teams that I meet are still working on that, what Tim Ottinger calls scatter-gather model,
Mhm.
where the manager or the scrum master, whoever, assigns individual
Yeah.
tasks to individual people and then scatters them and asks them, okay, now you work in parallel, right? That is death for mob program. That just
Yeah.
kills spirit. And I don't know what does it take for that to change,
Mhm.
because you probably have a lot of experience with that as well, where
Yeah.
you work on a team and everybody just has their own little precious thing they're working on, and that's what they're responsible for, and their job depends on that, and there's
Yeah.
bonus and salary. So they're not going to drop that and go and join the
Mhm.
collective.
Mhm.
Right? So I think so long as we put stronger emphasis on individual accomplishment
Mhm.
versus the collective accomplishment, mob programming is going to be tough to really take hold. That's just
Mhm.
my take. Maybe I'm wrong, but what I'm seeing is you need people in the session who are completely clear their agenda,
Yeah.
right? And now here we are making our living by swarming on this particular issue. And that's
Mhm.
all we worry about. And if we get it done, then everybody's going to be happy. You need to create that situation. If that situation is not created, people are not going to volunteer or jump in head first.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
So I'm,
And
I'm making it sound really hard, but that's the reality, right?
yeah, it's all connected. I mean, if you want people to focus on one thing, collectively, individually, they also have to be focused on a single thing.
Exactly. And
So
then
yeah,
you need to clear their agenda.
yeah, yeah.
You need
Otherwise,
to tell them, look, don't worry about the other stuff. I'll be perfectly happy when you guys together solve this one thing.
yeah. And
But how often do you hear that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, and I suppose you haven't always done mock programming. So, can you tell me about the first organization you introduced mock programming in, and what was the difference? What benefits you saw, and when did they come, actually?
So that was a few years back.
Mhm.
I was working on a project. I was brought in because the project was in downward spiraling.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to name names because it's gonna, but it's one of those things where you get to the point where probably the business people or the administrative staff had their own mob program mob sessions, and they came up with expectations, and then they hire a bunch of contractors
Uh-huh.
to get it done, right? And of course, if you are on the clock and everybody's nervous and yelling, go faster, 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 then you probably have no other option but to cut corners.
Mhm.
You you basically are just asked to make it work.
Yeah.
Just work, right? And but you and I know that you were in the coding interview, and we kind of talked about these things with me and who was
Max.
Max, yeah. So yeah, so we talked about these issues where first pass, first draft is just the beginning.
Yeah.
And the intention with the first cut is to make it as fast as possible to get the early feedback, right?
Yeah.
But usually, how do we get something done, make it work fast? We usually write spaghetti code.
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest, the simplest, the fastest, right? You just kind of throw some bunch of code in, you don't think about structure, you don't think about design. You just, what you want to do is you want to make the test pass. That's it.
Yeah.
And then that's just first draft. Then you refactor.
Yeah.
However, if you're under the gun, your first pass is final pass.
Yeah.
Because you throw in some spaghetti code, there's no structure, no design, nothing, everything's tightly coupled and blah, 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 ugly names, all that, just in a big rush. You're cutting corners, but it works.
Yeah.
And if it works, the boss is saying, okay, stop it, done, move on to the next, right? So I don't think it's fair, just on a side note, if you get called in to fix some project that is tanking or not going well, I don't think it's fair to point fingers necessarily at your predecessors who were under the gun. And maybe they were totally capable of making a really good product, but they were not allowed to.
Yeah.
So I'm not quick to, sometimes people, oh, this guy's stupid, didn't know how to. No, probably they were just like, okay, I want you to stop. And don't go back and refactor, not giving you that option.
Yeah.
To cut long story short, it was just a huge mess of spaghetti code. And then it was just, there was no option to rewrite, so we just had to refactor it. So I proposed, first I introduced TDD to the team because they didn't know it. And on the wings of that, I proposed we start doing mobbing. And I was experimenting with rotations. And I can't remember how, but I reached the point where I realized 4 minutes is a good chunk of time for the driver to, and then the driver gets up, the navigator becomes a driver. So we were rotating 4 minutes. It creates a lot of pent up energy and a lot of nervousness in the room. But it's very, that kind of constraint is very sometimes effective. It could be also detrimental. I mean, you got to play by ear. Some teams like 15 minutes, some teams like open-ended so I'm driving until all tests pass and we commit and push, which could take a few minutes or a few hours, you never know, right? But I was more like, okay, let's go mechanic. Like every 4 minutes, the alarm goes off, you get up, the other guy, and rotate like that. So that was the experiment, and it kind of worked for me. But again, it worked because we always had tests. We always had failing tests. And we always had some kind of a yardstick that's telling us, all right, we are not going to leave this session until all tests pass. And then later on, okay, but how about mutation testing? And that creates this momentum. So that it starts making sense to people. It's not just like some arbitrary Mickey Mouse experiment. Oh, let's just try this and that newfangled thing you read in some blog post, blah blah. But you can see the evidence from the situation you're in, where we are inching with test by test, making it pass. When everything's done, we run mutation testing. If all mutants killed, we're done. We can go home. So that was a very positive reinforcement. Of course, I remember having people approach me after the session saying, okay, Alex, I'm sorry to say this, but this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Just like that, like, this is so stupid. Okay. But also I had people after the session coming and say, I can't wait for the next one. So you have different reactions to it, right? The person, how they perceive things. But there will always be people who prefer to go and lock themselves away and work solo. That's a personal trait, I guess, and nothing wrong with that, right? But for what we are trying to do here, what really was in a bit of a larger picture, What
Mhm.
really was convincing is the speed.
Mhm.
And I'm not necessarily saying the speed of development, but the speed of delivery.
Okay.
You know, because when it comes to development, in my opinion, slow and steady wins
Mhm.
over fast and furious. However, what really matters in my mind is speed of delivery. How soon can we deliver?
Mhm.
And if we are doing the traditional way, where we scatter,
Mhm.
right, and everybody
Yeah.
works in parallel, and then we gather and we try to coordinate and put everything together, merge, resolve merge conflicts, etc., that always takes much longer.
Okay. Yeah.
So we apparently, I mean, this is the kind of official thinking from many angles. We apparently save some time upfront by saying, okay, instead of having all these smart people working on one thing, we will
Mhm.
have them each work on a separate thing. Therefore, everything is happening much faster
Yeah.
because now I'm utilizing my team much better. But I think that's false math,
Mhm.
because even though it's, yes, maybe now we're making really fast progress, but then when it comes to actually preparing the release and all that, that's when
Mhm.
things start drastically slowing down,
Yeah.
right? Not only that, but bigger problem than slowing down is unpredictability.
Mhm.
When you arrange your situation in such a way that you have to put things on the queue,
Mhm.
for example, a pull request or code review request or whatever, there's a queue and you say, okay, I reached the end of my task here.
Mhm.
There's not more for me to do. Now I'm going to put this thing on the queue, and Svetan is going to get notified that I have put this thing on the queue and that I'm waiting on him to review it or whatever, touch it, so that we can continue. Now, from your side of things, you get this message and you interpret it as, okay, Alex is asking me to drop whatever I'm doing and work on his thing, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa, and then, so then you see all these like, hey, Svetan, can I please ask you to please review? I mean, I'm waiting here. Can you review? And you're saying, look, Alex, I'm also under the gun here, my boss. So what I'm trying to say, this is the reality. I'm not
Mhm.
making this up.
Yeah.
Everybody. But where, in my opinion, the big problem in that is that wait time is completely unpredictable. There's no person in the world who has the crystal ball, who can tell you exactly when Svetan is going to find time to look into that.
Yeah.
It is this unpredictability that is killing us, that we are just kind of fingers crossed and hoping that maybe by the end of the day, Svetan will find a way, or maybe not. This is not a good way to conduct business.
Mhm.
We are all kind of throw things out, and now we're hoping that somebody will find the time to deal with them.
Mhm.
Though they're also busy with something else. So now we have a big work in progress
Mhm.
and a number of things vying for attention. And then you start getting a repeat message. Hey guys, can please somebody look into this? And then the message becomes more and more hostile. And then,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to escalate to my boss. And then the boss escalates to the CTO, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the way we arrange this, it's begging for conflict.
Mhm.
It's conflict after conflict.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you have this pile of conflicts in your daily work, the morale goes down, the motivation goes down. Everybody's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm just going to pretend I'm busy here. And, see, this arrangement is terrible, in my opinion. And mob programming is directly addressing all of these issues,
Mhm.
directly head on.
Yeah.
So when we do mob programming, all these things just go away. They disappear. They're not there anymore. This is
Yeah.
the biggest win. That's the biggest win, because all of a sudden the unpredictability evaporates.
Okay.
And we know that this team goes in, and okay, we cannot predict how fast can they solve this issue, but
Mhm.
we know once it's solved, it's done. It's merged, it's in trunk, it's been fully tested. reviewed,
Mhm.
done. You can go live, right? So this is the biggest win, the
Yeah.
biggest win. Why? Because now you are increasing your chances of getting feedback as soon as possible, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And the mantra is sooner, not faster. We work in such a way that we want to do things sooner, not faster. We're not rushing. We're not being sprinting or running like crazy.
Mhm.
We're doing things deliberately, properly. We write tests. Everything is very, very measured. Nobody's,
Yeah.
oh my God, let's cut corners, just shove it something. I don't care if it's tightly coupled. I don't care. Just shove it out. That's false economy, right? But we are doing our craft properly, measure
Mhm.
twice, cut once. Everything is there, everything passing, and no mutants surviving, and all that. But then it's done.
Yeah.
It's not like now it's the question mark. How long will it take until we actually get to the position to release it, right? And so that's where the biggest wins for the mob programming, where
Mhm.
they are. And also, I think it eliminates another time waster, because it's all about eliminating waste.
Yeah.
Another waste is wasting time on estimating.
Mhm.
This is another big black hole where people are asked to estimate and re-estimate and then do the retro. It's just wasting time, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean nothing, right? That doesn't mean anything. When you're a mobby, there's no estimate. You just, oh, here's the issue. Okay, let's work on it. Nobody stops and says, okay, let's estimate for it. No, you're
Yeah.
there. You're solving it. So I think the biggest problem, if we all agree on that and we say, okay, makes sense, Alex. We're going to do this, and no
Mhm.
more scatter gather, no more queuing, no more looping, blah blah. Now the biggest problem, I think, is teams knowing what is the most important thing to work on,
Okay.
because we're never in a situation where there's only one thing to work on.
Yeah.
Many issues are competing for our attention,
Mhm.
and many areas of business and this and that. So I think what we need to focus on, or come up with some kind of a rule of thumb, or I don't know, is knowing how to pick your battles. There's
Mhm.
many battles you can engage in. And if you engage in some trivial battles, then what's the point? You're just wasting time. You're solving something that just makes no difference, right? So how do we know that, yeah, at this moment, this is the most important battle for us?
Mhm.
I think that's where the success criterion comes in.
Mhm.
And again, that means collaboration between pretty much everyone. I call them people who have skin in the game, people
Mhm.
who are who directly are affected by this game. Not just somebody sitting on the sidelines saying, "Oh, this is interesting show, I'm going to watch it." No, your future, your career, your whatever prosperity depends on the game. And now you're very motivated to carefully pick and choose, what are we going to work on next,
Mhm.
right? And it shouldn't be a macho game or an arm wrestling game, but a really realistic business opportunity, right?
Mhm.
And so that is something that I'm not seeing any guidance, or haven't found any way of, or a system, or how do you calculate that? I guess, maybe there is no way,
Okay.
but I think everything depends on that. It's not enough to just pick whatever and solve it. That doesn't guarantee you anything, right?
Yeah. And I
That's
think
where we're at.
that makes the business a business. I mean, if
Yeah,
it was easy to prioritize, there won't be business though, because you won't be able to innovate and to find.
exactly. So now we're seeing more and more industry leaders
Mhm.
abandoning projects, and they're just going into they're running experiments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just okay, experimenting all the time, and then experiment will tell you what holds some promise and what is up. You can cut your losses, forget about it, don't even try it. So that's where the real acumen comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's a big shift in thinking. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
because up until recently, everybody was just doing projects. and roadmaps and charters and
Yeah.
but now it feels so pedestrian. It feels so 20th century, right? And you see all these other organizations just passing you by. They just go innovate. I mean, the
Yeah.
best example was a Blockbuster versus Netflix.
Yes.
Blockbuster was complacent in their projects and all that, whatever they were doing. And then you have this little David and Goliath situation. David comes in experimenting like crazy, inventing new technology, in the process killing them, basically, just destroying competition.
Yeah.
The bad world of business.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you actually seen anything that has become worse because of mobbing?
Worse.
Yes.
Well, depending on what you mean by worse. I've seen people quit because of it. Sorry. Is that worse or not? I don't know. Some people just rubs them the wrong way and they leave the company.
Yeah, it depends on the culture you want to establish.
Yeah.
If you want cooperation, then it might be better for people to quit.
Yeah. But again, depending on how people interpret that, sometimes people, anytime somebody quits, it is a blow to the team morale, right? We shouldn't be taking it lightly. When a excuse me, sir.
No,
when a loyal team who's been with team for years quits, that sends tremors through the team, right? We're trying to avoid that as much as possible, but it happens.
Yeah.
Actually, in such a drastic culture shifts, right? And some people just feel like, look, I just not for me. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then we do have maybe duty to accommodate to a certain degree, but when it comes to either the team survives or you cannot let one person overweigh the entire team. It's just too much to ask, I think.
Yeah.
We can say, okay, because of you and your special way of you like doing things, we will just abandon all these intentions and all. That's not going to work, right? So, in a place of business, I think the business requirements overrule individual agendas. There's always individual agendas to consider.
Yeah.
And it's very important to take everything into consideration and see if we can accommodate everything. But when push comes to shove, the interests of the business take over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then regrettably, we cannot accommodate your expectations here, right?
Yeah.
But and this really is regrettably because these people are also incredibly good and they are very talented. They just don't like that type of approach. It's culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So as far as bad sides, that would be the bad side, that you can squeeze some good people.
Okay, we only have 10 minutes left. I have a bit more questions, around 5 or 6 questions remaining. Just tell me if you have the time, or we should.
I have time.
Stop. Okay, I'll try to be a bit faster with these. So about the project that that was. Hey, Alex. I just lost you for a minute.
Yeah. I think probably internet connection, you froze. So maybe repeat if you can repeat.
Yeah. So about the project that you went to save from the down spiral, do you have an observation when did the benefits of mobbing come and things started to improve after you introduced that practice?
Well, I think it's a couple of things that become really obvious. One is the sense of accomplishment, which is much more pronounced when doing mob programming, collective collaboration, versus when everybody's working in isolation.
Mhm.
And you just take your ticket, you just work on it, and you're done, and it doesn't feel like much.
Mhm.
Just people are just kind of rushing to get this to empty their plates.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But with mob programming, that the purpose is more pronounced.
Mhm.
You feel people feel more sense of purpose
Yeah.
and belonging, and then there's this sense of camaraderie. It is to me, mob programming, I would call it a friendly way.
Mhm.
It is the way of friends. You become friends, and you get the sense of security. You feel
Mhm.
safe and secure. you
Yeah.
feel like you feel like uh, your back is covered. You
Mhm.
feel like, because if you're working isolation, you often think, "Oh, what's going on? Maybe they are thinking about getting rid of me." If people
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
suspicions, "Oh, nobody's talking to me." La, la. But when you're working in a mob, the solidarity quickly uh, solidifies. So you feel sense of solidarity, you're supporting each other, you're
Mhm.
learning from each other, everything's in real time. There's this emotional bond,
Mhm.
and then you belong, you have purpose, and you feel completely safe and secure, and you like coming back to that situation
Mhm.
because it gives you the sense of, I'm doing something useful, my life it has meaning, my work has meaning, I have good buddies here, and I trust these people
Mhm.
because we are always here, right?
Yeah.
That would be one good side. Another good side, was what I talked about before, is obviously increasing the predictability by eliminating those wait times.
Yeah.
So when you have the queue and you put something on the queue and nobody knows when this is going to be processed, that creates a lot of what's the word, uncertainty.
Mhm. Mhm.
But currently, if you're not doing mobbing, if you're doing tradition model, there's a lot of uncertainty in your process.
Yeah.
You cannot go to the stakeholder and say, "Yeah, this is, I know exactly when this is going." You don't know, because you know that people will be, first of all, everybody's juggling a lot of balls up in the air.
Mhm.
Nobody knows, like, okay, all of a sudden this drops or whatnot. Nobody can say when exactly is this going to happen.
Mhm.
When mobbing, we eliminate those time wasting, idling
Mhm.
periods, and now all of a sudden we feel we're completely in charge. It's
Yeah.
all down to our ability to solve the problem. Nothing else affects that. So that creates this kind of sense of predictability.
Mhm.
And with predictability, you can demonstrate quite quickly to the stakeholders that you are getting things done sooner.
Mhm.
And when those who are invested in this game, who are responsible for the uh, delivery, and who are signing the paychecks, right?
Mhm.
They usually get nervous. Oh my God, why is it taking so long? All these things. But
Yeah.
when they see that teams are now delivering sooner, then they relax. It gives you a sense of confidence.
Mhm.
So the confidence in the team grows.
Mhm.
Confidence grows, then what happens is team is given more authority.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, the team is now being seen as, hey, these guys know what they're doing, and let them, whatever they need, let's pave the way for them. They need more money, they need more this and that, whatever. All of a sudden, they start investing, making prudent investment in the team, and they
Mhm.
trust and confidence in the team, and that definitely benefits everyone. It improves the morale. It also improves the quality,
Mhm.
frequency of delivery. Customers are happier, bosses are happier, stakeholders.
Yeah.
So it's all like all around improvement,
Mhm. Mhm.
all around improvement. Now, I just remember one more potentially bad side of mob programming, which is
Okay.
at the end of let's say we go into mob program session and we are working on solving one issue and we solve it.
Mhm.
Now, that solution that code has no author. You cannot attach a name to it.
Okay.
It's not, you cannot say, oh, this is threatens code. No, because we all shaped it. Some people find that troublesome because I want my name on that. You know, if I'm working as, oh, this is Alex's code. See, he's good. You know, you lose that, and with losing that, you lose the argument to go to your boss and ask for a raise or something, because it's like it's collective ownership, right? You don't own it, and now people. So how am I going to get the raise? How am I going to claim I want bigger bonus and all that? This is where some people start getting like, oh, I don't like this. I prefer me being the hero and then going to the boss and say, okay, this year I want the raise, this year I want bigger bonus. These are the things that we haven't sorted out.
Okay.
As well as the bosses are not clear now. How do I evaluate individuals? Because they're used to doing individual performance evaluation. Most organizations have once a year sit down with the individual and review what you did, and okay, what are the areas of improvement, what blah blah, and then we give you this much raise, or whatever. Here's your bonus based on your merit. All that disappears from when you're doing more programming. Right. So,
but you have to replace it somehow, probably, because
we don't know how.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't heard of a method or a system that does that. Still, in many organizations today, people are being traditionally evaluated. Increase based on merit, bonus based on your individual merit. It's not per team. And even another bad side is in those systems such as Jira, which most teams use. Every issue is associated with individual.
Yeah.
So it just does not support mobbing at all. Because in mobbing, there is no individual ownership, right? And that's where the disconnect is. And these things are serious problems, right? Because we don't know how to organizationally how to deal with it.
Okay.
So, but it's early days, right? I mean, Jira is a terrible system for that, right?
Yeah.
The worst possible system.
But of course, it's the most widely adopted. So
yeah, exactly. So how are you gonna get yourself out of that predicament? It's not gonna happen overnight. It's not. It's a big investment. Many businesses paying big bucks to have that, and Jira is entrenched. Everybody's expecting Jira ticket. Yeah, so I don't think it's naive. It's a big problem. Okay.
And let's go to the less philosophical questions. So what's the size of a mob in your company?
It varies, right? It could be very small, depending on, because it's a swarm, right?
Yeah.
And now you never know. You cannot have a formula or predict how big the swarm is going to be. Sometimes 3 people is enough. Sometimes you need to pull in security. You need to pull in, compliance, the credit, all subject matter experts helps when they're sitting in and answering questions right there.
Okay.
They don't have to be programmers. They could be subject matter experts, marketing, public relations, legal, you name it. Depending on what the issue is, preferably you would like to involve all people with skin in the game, all people who are affected by that, right?
Okay.
Ideally, also customers.
And people are open to this, like just put them for what they're doing.
Depending on the organization. Some people, typically smallish startups are open. Large organizations that are siloed are not that open because everybody has their own turf and like, no, I'm not gonna. No, it's almost like not allowed to cross mingle, right? And then, I worked in government organizations that have unions, and the union rules forbid such cross. It's forbidden. It's a big problem, right? So it's really, it's impossible to have a one size fit all, but preferably, I think anybody who is affected by this issue should be joining the session or make themselves available because
Okay.
we may be mobbing for a couple of hours, and maybe there's a legal issue or something to do with the copy or whatever, there's some rule.
Mhm.
At least we can give heads up to whoever subject matter expert is. Hey, would you be like keeping an eye on your notifications, and we maybe ping you if we need you to jump in, because we want to get answers to the questions ideally right when the question pops up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We don't like in our program, we don't like asynchronous communication where we open the ticket and then
Yeah.
chase after, hey, have you had a chance to look into this ticket? No, sorry, I'm busy, I'm going away, and blah, blah. We want when the question pops up.
Yeah, yeah. So, because otherwise you get yet another bottleneck in the process, and you don't want.
And yet another unpredictable wait time.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you're back to your old ways. So I hope this wasn't a philosophical answer.
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting. So I'm fine with that. And how long are the mob sessions? How frequent?
It again depends, right?
I mean, in your team, for example.
It varies really, because we want to swarm around issues, but we have made a conscious decision from top down to abandon optimizing for utilization and to only optimize for value delivery.
Okay.
Which means we are okay with people having idle time. It's not a problem. Prior, you have situations where everybody has to be busy every minute of the day, right?
Yeah.
You want to maximize that utilization. But now we're like, look, so long as we're delivering value and it's at a predictable pace, and then if you hit a lull, it's okay. You can do whatever you want. You can do your own little experiments. You can read a blog post. You can watch an instructional video. You can, sharpen your axe, right? Not a problem. But when the issue comes, we want everybody full attention swarming in and focusing to get it done, right?
Okay.
That would be in theory, right? But again, I'm not saying that this is early days, let's just say, right? And of course, different organizations have different levels of accomplishment. Right?
Yeah.
In my experience, it's basically because I've been moving from organization to organization. I haven't spent like a large chunk of time in one organization to see how this thing unfolds, where it's going. But overall, I think it should not necessarily be on cadence. It should be on a case-to-case basis. We have a new issue. Who's involved? Okay, we create a swarm.
Yeah.
And maybe it gets resolved in 5 minutes. It's similar to hot fixes, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. When you have a hot fix or you have a severity 1 outage, then it's all hands on deck. They're like, okay, drop whatever you're doing. Let's all get together and let's attend to this severe outage.
Okay.
And we will not stop until we solve it.
Okay.
And the only difference maybe is that mobbing is not necessarily a life or death severe outage, but it's an issue that was identified as priority. And the idea is, okay, now everybody's drop whatever you're doing. Let's get together. Let's solve this and go back and continue what you were doing.
Yeah.
But again, like we talked, this is a question of priority.
Yeah.
Or being able to identify real priority.
Okay, and how do you do retrospectives during the mobbing sessions, and how do you do them?
Not in my experience, maybe. I think there comes a point in my experience where when the problem gets solved and all the tests pass and hopefully there's no more surviving mutants, then there's this feeling of relief. Okay. And I don't remember now. Okay, let's do the retro, but maybe we should. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's like this rewarding feeling. Okay, great, good vibe.
Yeah, that's the retro you need. I mean, like the feedback.
explicit, but it's like, okay, feels good.
Yeah, I see.
Right.
Okay.
Retros are important. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
It's a good point, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Like I say, it's early days. There are people who are way more steeped into it and can give you way more details, right?
Mhm.
Because usually my experience is mostly from making that transformation, trying to make it, and then once it's there, then okay, I move on to something else, right?
Aha. Okay,
Yeah.
I
But the
see.
people who stick on it and stay for years, then maybe you'll hear some interesting details.
Yeah.
For me, it's all still early days. Same as with no estimates. It's quite early days.
Mhm. So
We have some. I mean, I insist very categorically that we don't want to engage in any estimate. But it does not always fly well, right? People want to have estimate. It is again, it is something that is very, I think, important to make that transformation. But I think people are still too much into comparing software development with other non-software activities, such as if you have contractors coming to do some renovation in the house, you always ask for estimate. You take your car to the mechanic, you always ask for the estimate, right?
yeah,
And I think the same model applies to software development, right? That's a tough one.
I agree. And are you doing popping in the usual driver navigator setup, or you also utilize other rows?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
The traditional mobbing style is you have one driver and several navigators as rows.
Mhm.
Do you do it in that way, or you have other rows also? Why can the
Well, usually it's one driver, one navigator, and then there is the sort of a inner crew,
Mhm.
where I forgot how we call them. So I'm the facilitator usually, and then you have these I forgot how they call them, people who are really into software design and development, and then
Mhm.
we have the peanut gallery, which is people who are sitting maybe in the back, and
Okay.
they are observing, or they can jump in with some suggestions, but not necessarily, not nothing to do with software engineering. It's mostly business policy rules and stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
They will never be involved in navigating or driving,
Mhm.
but it's useful sometimes to have them either in the peanuts gallery or ask them to make themselves available in case we have a question, and we can just ping them.
Mhm.
Can you pop in? Just we have one question for you to clarify.
Yeah, I see.
That
Okay.
time. Yeah.
And then talking about the people who make them up, how experienced are they?
um, really varied experience, very,
Okay.
very, very, very different level, depending, right? There are some teams that are kind of pretty cohesive, kind of at the same level, and then there are teams with like novices to really, really advanced.
Mhm.
It varies. It
Okay.
really varies, yeah.
And how do you find it compared to pairing? Pairing?
Depending on what kind of pairing, most people find pairing. I find a lot of people do pairing in a boring way that is counterproductive.
Mhm.
So, basically they sit next to the senior guy who keeps banging for hours, and they just kind of get bored.
Yeah.
But there are people who do what I think is called promiscuous pairing, where they also rotate.
Yeah.
So it's not like senior is just doing the coding, junior is sitting and yawning.
Yeah.
And promiscuous pairing is pretty much close to mob programming, right? If you're rotating and all that. So yeah, for them, it's kind of easy transition. A lot of people, I think, when they come into mob programming, they think they will be just sitting back and watching one guy bang at the keyboard. They don't understand the dynamics of it, right?
Yeah.
But I find that during mob programming session, there is certain mindset or certain energy that I haven't witnessed anywhere else. Meaning, when we are going after something and there's all these hiccups and whatnot, and people chime in and people say, no, do this, do that. Why don't we try this? That there are many learning moments.
Mhm.
Many times there's something that I personally never knew is possible, and also, makes sense. But then, because of this emotional charge or something, that learning really stays with you.
Okay.
Like if I'm reading a book or reading some blog post and watching an instructional video, there will be a lot of things that I never heard of before and interesting and wow, but then I forget them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, even though I think this is very important, this is cool, and then a few weeks later, I'm like, I remember, I think I saw that in this video, but what was it? I don't know. But when I see something in live mobbing, that stays with me.
Okay.
That's the difference, in my opinion. I don't know why is that. There's something about that kind of situation that
Uh-huh.
it's kind of, there's some kind of emotional connection that really now you retain that,
Yeah, yeah.
and that there's a big value in that as well.
Okay, okay. And the last questions. Do you have any special mob programming setup, be it local or remote?
It varies. It's down to the team how they want. We can. There's many ways to skin a cat, right? There's
Yeah.
and tools and all that. I like to keep it simple, but the team eventually converges to whatever they feel like doing. As far as the mechanics go,
Mhm.
I'm not in any way prejudged. Prejudged. I don't have prejudged. What's the word? Any biases
Aha,
towards
okay.
one or the other, but whatever makes the team comfortable. The mechanics not that important to me, right? It just the actual process and swarming
Yeah, okay.
and solving the issue. That's basically it.
Yeah.
And realizing that despite what common sense or traditional way of thinking is telling us, it is not wasteful. Because usually people at first say, "What? I'm going to put 7 people on one," and they're like, "It's like putting what's the word? You can have one woman produce a baby in 9 months. So if you put 9 women, they will produce baby in 1 month or something
Yeah,
like that."
yeah.
So that's the prejudice against that you often hear, like, "Oh no, no." If you talk to higher ups and like, "Okay, we are planning to do this, so tell me more about it." Well, we get everybody in a room and they solve one problem. No, no, that's so wasteful, right? So that's one hurdle you need to kind of overcome, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all from me. If you'd like to add anything else as a comment or thoughts, that's my actual last
Uh-huh.
question for the.
Yeah, I would like to mention that to me, it's very interesting how we as a profession have organized our uh, way of working. We have since the beginning of our profession, we have been focusing on automating business processing, right?
Mhm.
And so we learn how to automate paperwork and all these like manual and involved processes when running a business. Also, we have learned how to automate the workflow, because every
Mhm.
business has a workflow.
Yeah.
The customer signs a document and gets approved, and that's the customer. There's a workflow, right?
Yeah.
And the way we did it was typically, now you may disagree with me, but typical workflows that I'm seeing how it's being done is by blocking.
Okay.
So, you have certain capabilities. Your system knows how to read the file. Your system knows how to get this value. Your system knows how to make this transformation. Your
Mhm.
system knows how to route to this other whatever. Your system knows how to persist. So all these modules, we know how to build them, we know how to test them, we know how to make them good.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stringing them together,
Okay.
first the customer has to make a deposit. Then, we do that by blocking.
Yeah.
Which is what I call one-piece flow.
Okay.
So when we're in the process of waiting for the customer to send or receiving this deposit, we block the rest of the system from doing anything else. The system is waiting until this gets done, and then the next step kicks in, everything else is frozen, and so on. Right?
Yeah.
But when you look at how we have arranged our development workflow, it's not blocking.
Yeah. Okay.
It's asynchronous, right? So we have many things happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Which means we have big work in progress. I call it work in progress buffer, which means we're juggling many balls up in the air.
Yeah.
Which means we are putting things on the queue, which means we are creating unpredictable wait times, which means we are shooting ourselves in the foot by creating a process that is completely unpredictable. So that always bothered me. I was always wondering, why are we doing it this way? Why don't we also do blocking?
Yeah.
And this is what mob programming is doing. It reintroduces this proper way of doing things, right? So that we work only on one, it's a one-piece flow. Work on only one thing at a time, get it done, then you work on the next thing. Instead of, okay, let's start working at the same time on all these things, which would be equivalent of you at the same time, reading the file, you're persisting, you're transforming in any chaotic order, right? So that would be my observation as to the parallels between how we automate business processing and how we automate our own internal workflow when we're developing software. So I think it's going back to the one-piece flow, right? That we are now discovering that this is the most effective way to do things. And again, why? Because we are introducing predictability into our workflow, which is now giving higher confidence to the stakeholders that we as a team know what we're doing and we can deliver. Okay. So that would be my observation. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you disagree. Maybe somebody will say, no, this is completely wrong. But that's, how I see things.
Yeah, my comment on this is that with all the hype around remote working, people are trying to market it as, you can work asynchronously and do whatever you like and be free with your job. And it's actually the opposite direction that the industry is kind of going. So I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and again, from my perspective, to me, it's early days. I think everything what I say about this is still kind of exploratory and trial and error. I'm not, haven't reached any like final conclusions, but I'm just sharing my observations with you, right? Yeah. But again, I will say, to me, this feels like the biggest breakthrough in the past 20 years or so, right? I haven't seen bigger ones, but who knows? Maybe there is something that I'm missing, right? Yeah. It's a fast-paced field, so let's see. Of course, yeah. And it's maturing, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you a lot for this conversation. It was really interesting, and yeah, probably talk to you soon or whenever. Thank you, and we'll talk later. Yeah, bye. Bye-bye.